Thank you, Chair. Just when I thought that the Carney Liberal government could not be more out of touch on this particular study, we have Mr. Maloney, the current Liberal caucus chair and former parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Justice in the last Parliament, accuse Conservatives and other advocates of fear-mongering. Well, I couldn't see anything more out of touch than that when you've had, for the last 4 years, mayors such as you, Mr. Gillingham, premiers of every province and territory, police chiefs across the country, police association presidents, victim advocacy groups, all pleading and begging with this Liberal government to wake up to the reality on our streets that victims and Canadians are terrified. Those are the facts. They read and see every single day, example after example, of people committing violent crimes while out on bail. Mr. Maloney says facts matter. He needs to read the paper. He needs to follow what's happening on the media, because that's exactly what is happening. And then he has the audacity to say, we have good laws? If we had good laws, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in right now. We have a situation called principle of restraint, that regardless of the offense you commit, regardless of the number of releases you're on, regardless of your criminal record, which shows a history of breaching bail and a history of committing the same offense over and over again, this Liberal government directed and instructed judges to release the accused at the earliest opportunity on the least restrictive conditions.
Point of order,
Mr.
Chair. If Mr. Brock is going to make accusations and suggest he's relying on facts, I suggest he does it himself.
That's not a point of order, Mr. Chair.
The Liberal government has never instructed a judge, in my experience, ever.
Chair, that is not a point of order.
Yeah, look, obviously here, it may or may not be a point of order. You have 3 minutes left. I assume you have a question, because the principle of restraint obviously is not being applied to the line of questioning here. So just please get to it.
If we had good laws, we would not be here today studying this issue. If we had good laws, and we've heard from the Prime Minister, from Carney, from Justin Trudeau, we've heard from former justice ministers saying how sound our bail laws were and that the whole concept of fear is simply in our heads. Former Justice Minister Arif Virani indicated that, a former Crown attorney as well. So if we had those laws, we wouldn't be hearing from this Liberal government now saying we're finally waking up to the reality. We have been listening, and we're going to be introducing bail legislation sometime this week. Okay? We've been hearing that literally for the last 7 months. So I've identified the elephant in the room, and that's the principle of restraint. We have a bill already in the House of Commons tabled, the Jail Not Bail Act, which seeks at its principal core to replace the principle of restraint when it comes to repeat violent offending, and replacing that with the principle of protection and community safety. How do you anyone feel about that as addressing a tool to ensure that repeat violent offenders are detained in custody where they belong?
Just one of you, I guess, because there's only a minute and 20 seconds left.
I think that's a good point, and in my mind, this is when I talk about using a scalpel and taking evidence-based approaches. The issue with the concerns many Canadians have, when we look at one of the root causes is, especially with our First Nations Canadians, with our Indigenous Canadians who they're disproportionate within our system. Had we, and 10 years ago, we made a commitment as a nation to addressing the challenges that exist in these communities, had we followed through with more than 13 out of 90 some odd calls to action, had we seen and if we increased our investment into our First Nations communities, we wouldn't see the numbers, and we wouldn't see the recidivism. We need to have, with any bail program, we do need to have a very a very calculated, evidence-based approach going into bail. But as I said, on that trajectory of bail, we need to have resources in place. And I believe that those resources do come from the federal government, that the federal government has an obligation, especially to our First Nations people, to ensure that they have the supports and that their communities are reaching the health and the vibrance and the opportunities. We're not seeing that to the same degree across the country. I know there are some good success stories that we've seen in Alberta with Oxford House and others, but in my mind, this is where we fall short in considering the process of bail and the monitoring and the enforcement while on monitoring.
Thank you, Mr.